about the place where Prophet Muhammad ascended to the heavens, its historic and spiritual significance, and the present attempts by extremist Jews to destroy it are all detailed in this 3-part documentary.
For the past 20 years, the object of almost none.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير.
Glory be to him who carried his servant by night, from the holy mosque to the furthest mosque, the precincts of which we have blessed, that we might show him some of our signs. He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. Al-Aqsa, the furthest mosque, the noble sanctuary. Al-Haram al-Sharif, the first Qibla and third holiest site of Islam. Al-Aqsa, for 1,300 years dominating the skyline and the life of Jerusalem. Al-Quds, the holy city. Land of the Isra and Miraj, for 1,300 years a center of pilgrimage for Muslims from all over the world. For the past 20 years, the object of almost none. From the morning of June 7, 1967, when Israeli troops stormed and seized the noble sanctuary, to the present day, Al-Aqsa has been under attack. Palestine, the land of the prophets, rich in history. The history of generations of believers who lived and worshipped and fought and died here, praising their Lord and defending their faith. Nearly 4,000 years ago, the prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, stopped in the land of Canaan. He was a true believer, one pure of faith, who surrendered his will to God alone, with no associates. From his sons Ishmael and Isaac came 2 great nations of believers, the descendants of Abraham, 2 rivers from a single sea. But the nearest to Abraham were those who most closely followed his way. 6 centuries later, the prophet Moses, peace be upon him, revived his teachings and led his people, descendants of Isaac, out of Egypt. Their destination, Palestine, the land of Canaan. 2 more centuries and the prophet David, peace be upon him, united the scattered tribes of Israel. He took Jerusalem for his capital. It is said that he brought with him the Ark of the Covenant. The prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, inherited the kingdom from David and built fortifications and a place of worship. A place of worship on a site revered since ancient times, a hill known as Moriah. The kingdom split into 2 in the struggle for power following Solomon's death. Israel to the north, and tiny Judah, including Jerusalem, to the south. After 200 years of bitter rivalry between these 2 kingdoms, Israel was conquered by the Syrians, and Judah found itself the sole remaining remnant of the Israelite nation, and foundering. A temple cult developed in the house of worship built by Solomon. Elaborate rituals and a paid priesthood were put in place. Protagonists of a return to the pure teachings of Moses were beaten and banned. Incidents of injustice and immorality within the general populace became rampant. The destruction of the temple, and with it Jerusalem, was prophesied. Nebuchadnezzar entered Jerusalem in 586 BC. The temple was sacked and set fire to, and razed to the ground. The royal palace and all the great houses were destroyed. The population carried off in chains to Babylon. And they lamented on their long march into exile. If we had just performed the will of God and devoutly sung his praises, we would not have into your hands been delivered. Judah ceased to exist. 400 years of rule by the house of David had come to an end. 36 BC, the Persians overthrew the Babylonians and encouraged exiles to return. Construction began on the Second Temple and was completed in 20 years. After 200 years of relative peace, the Greeks captured Jerusalem. Attempts at Hellenization, including the rededication of the Second Temple to Zeus and the sacrifice of pigs on its altar, sparked a revolt. In 164 BC, Hasmonean Jews captured Mount Moriah and reconsecrated the temple. But after 100 years of Jewish rule, the society they created lay in ruins, broken down by years of vicious infighting. Jerusalem was overrun by Rome in 63 BC. Herod was appointed king of Judea. He slaughtered the last of the Hasmoneans and ordered a lavish restoration and extension of the Second Temple. A period of great civil unrest followed, with strife between pacifists and zealots, and riots against the Roman authorities. In the midst of this chaos, Jesus of Nazareth, peace be upon him, began his teaching mission. His attempts to call people back to the pure teachings of Abraham and Moses were judged subversive by the authorities. He was tried and sentenced to death. Yet they did not slay him, but only a likeness that was shown to them. Years later, Jewish zealots captured the Temple Mount and massacred Roman troops in Herod's palace. After 3 years of revolt, Titus of Rome laid siege to Jerusalem. The fiercely defended temple eventually fell, and with it, the whole city. Seeking a complete and enduring victory, Titus ordered the total destruction of the Herodian temple. It was the 70th year of the Christian era. A new city, named Alia, was built by the Romans on the ruins of Jerusalem, and a temple dedicated to Jupiter raised up. In 324, Constantine of Byzantium marched on Alia. He rebuilt the city walls and commissioned the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and opened the city for Christian pilgrimage. After nearly 300 years of Christian rule, Jerusalem was sacked again, this time by the Sassanid Persians. The Christians were massacred and their holy places destroyed. 15 years later, Byzantine rule was restored and the Persians expelled. Attempts were made to rebuild the city, but the die was cast.
Allahu Akbar,
600 miles to the south, Mecca had just surrendered to a far more dynamic and compassionate force, and it was spreading north at an unprecedented rate, soon to overwhelm all of Byzantium, carrying with it the pure essence of the teaching of Abraham, the path revealed to Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the way of Islam. In 638, Jerusalem's 1,000 years of recurrent religious persecution, intolerance, and oppression were brought to an abrupt halt. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph of Islam, entered Al-Quds. Eager to be rid of their Byzantine overlords, and aware of their shared heritage with the Arabs, the descendants of Ishmael, as well as the Muslims' reputation for mercy and compassion in victory, the people of Jerusalem handed over the city after a brief siege. They made only one condition: that the terms of their surrender be negotiated directly with the Caliph Umar in person. Umar entered Jerusalem on foot. There was no bloodshed. There were no massacres. Those who wanted to leave were allowed to, with all their goods. Those who wanted to stay were guaranteed protection for their lives, their property, and places of worship. It is related that Umar asked Sophronius, the city patriarch, to take him to the sanctuary of David as soon as he was through writing the terms of surrender. They were joined by 4,000 of the Sahaba. When they reached the area of the noble sanctuary, they found it covered in rubbish. Umar proceeded to the west of the sanctuary and unfurled his cloak. He filled it with debris. Those with him did likewise. They disposed of it and returned, again and again, until the whole area where Al-Aqsa Mosque now stands was cleared. The entire area included more than 35 acres. The great rock, site of the Prophet's ascension to heaven on the night journey and direction of the first Qibla, lay in the center. The rock was uncovered and the ground purified.